those are things that will not be under the Obama plan for regulation. And again, these are things that have been lobbied substantially by the banking industry. Do not take the least generic things, the most complex things that we can make the most amount of money out of, because neither the regulators nor our investors, frankly, really understand what we're doing in them. Do not take those away from us. And the administration was like, okay, but we're going to create this sort of sweeping, standardized regulatory system for some of the derivatives. Will it help a little bit? Yes. Will it help the real problem? No, it will not.
You referred to this, Nomi, in discussing Goldman Sachs, but the bigger picture of what you call the big bank bailout, payback, bamboozle.
Well, this is part of the $13.6 trillion versus the $700 billion. A couple weeks ago, 10 banks said or were allowed by the Treasury Department to pay back all or a portion of the TARP money they'd received. One was Goldman that had $10 billion, one was JP Morgan Chase that had $25 billion, and so forth. The collective money of those 10 banks was $68 billion they would be paying back. They happen to owe $229 billion. The media didn't really mention that part. They only mentioned, oh, the banks are paying back this money, things must be healthy, the financial system must be stabilizing, and all is sort of good. The reality is they owe $229 billion just from the FDIC guarantees they were able to use and from the AIG money. That does not include the trillions of dollars, and this is the biggest problem in all of this, that are on the Fed's books that we do not know how it was divided out among these banks. So we know of $229 billion. We also know there are multiple trillions of dollars on the Fed's books that went out to these and other banks. We don't know how much because they will not disclose that information.
Why aren't they forced to?
Well, this is the biggest part of both the overhaul that Obama has mentioned and also the fact that the Fed is the most powerful regulator already. They're responsible for the banking system. They're responsible for subsidizing it. There have been multiple FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to the Fed from bodies between, I worked with The Nation to try to get information through to Bloomberg, to Fox. The entire spectrum of media has tried to get information from the Fed on these loans, and the Fed has basically said, and Bernanke has said this to the Senate and to the House, that this would actually be dangerous. It would be dangerous to give this information out because somehow if people knew, it would create some larger catastrophic situation. The reality is we kind of know who these banks are. The bigger banks have the tightest relationship with the Fed. They actually own portions of the Fed because they actually own shares in the Fed. They have an incredibly symbiotic relationship, and they've gotten trillions of dollars of subsidies. We don't know what the Fed won't say. The Fed hasn't been made to say.
I'd like to ask one last question. Both Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs were allowed in September, right in the midst of the crisis, to turn themselves into bank holding companies overnight. Could you explain the significance of that?
Yeah, there was a chaotic Sunday evening, September 21st, where Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley noted that Lehman Brothers had just fallen apart, that they actually did not have enough money to pay their ongoing day-to-day debts. They were literally about to become insolvent, one or both of these institutions. The only thing that they could do is push the Fed to allow them to become bank holding companies, which would give them access to federal subsidies. Just legally, in terms of the legislative construct, if they get to be a bank holding company, they get more access to our money. So they said, okay, the Fed at night on a Sunday, without even waiting for the 5-day mandatory antitrust period, decided, okay, fine. That enabled Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs to become bank holding companies, to get under the public subsidy tent, and to get a lot of this money, the FDIC guarantees, the Fed backing, and everything else. And that was the Fed's decision. They could have said no. They said, come on, and we'll do it really quick. Just tell us where to sign.
Nomi Prins, I want to thank you for being with us. Nomi Prins is an economist. She used to work with Goldman Sachs and Bear Stearns. Now she is exposing them. Her article, The Big Bank Bailout, Payback, Bamboozle, appears in Mother Jones. And her article, Obama's New Economic Plan, The Good, the Bad, and the Weak, is at alternet.org. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute.